It is the most fantabulous day to just show up. Hi, everyone. Yvonne Heath here, nurse turned author, speaker, and changemaker, and your host. Welcome to Navigating Grief with Heart and Humor, where we talk about, plan, and prepare for grief, transitions, and end of life long before they arrive and diffuse the fear so we can live fully now. Or at least that's what we aspire to do. Often we have been in the deepest trenches of grief, crisis, divorce, diagnosis, job loss, mental health issue, the death of loved ones. And we realized how ill prepared we were. People often say to me, "Oh, you can't prepare for these things." And I beg to differ. We can prepare in many ways, and that's what we're here to do. We've done it the other way, right? In denial until something happens, pretending we're fine when we're not, and we want to do it differently. This isn't about avoiding grief. This is about being able to grieve by eliminating excessive suffering. So that is my hope and my passion and my purpose for my life, and to teach by example, support one another, and learn from one another for the rest of our lives. So let's begin. Let's just land here for our time together. Forget about the noise on the outside, all the things that are pulling you away from this moment. You are here for a reason, and I invite you to set that intention. What does your heart, what does your soul need to hear today? And as always, I will take a moment or two to just land here, quiet the noise in my head, the noise out there, by taking 2 slow, deep breaths. And whatever you need to do, whatever ritual you have to just settle in and be present, I invite you to do it now or join me as I take my 2 deep breaths. Okay, let's get started. I am fully present. I have a coffee here today because we are just going to be sharing a story. Those of you who are joining me live, it's amazing to have you here. And for those who are listening to the recording, you will not be hearing this story as it unfolds. But for right here, right now, in this moment, I am living what I have been teaching through a lovely friend of my mom's. And that's the story I'm going to share today. So let's talk about Joe. Sorry to all the Joes out there. I always say Joe. That name means a lot to me for many reasons. And of course, as I'm going to share a real story, I'm changing the person's name to respect them. And also, I am sharing to honor their journey. And I have let them know. I said, you know what, Joe? I'm going to be sharing this story, and it is going to teach people what not to do. What not to do. Wow, Joe, you are a great teacher. And you know, when I said that to Joe, he had a great big belly laugh and he said, "Yep, you're absolutely right." So let's just go back. This person, this gentleman, Joe, actually was someone that my mom dated very short term many years ago. He lived in this apartment complex just down the road from my mom. They were friends, and then they kind of dated, and then that didn't last, and so they parted ways. Joe moved away. He was gone for years, and then he came back to the town, to where we live, where my mom lives, and he settled in. They had a few conversations, but honestly, she hadn't seen Joe in many years until she received a phone call 1 week ago. And Joe had been living on his own, had a nice apartment, a car, very independent, not a very social person, almost a social recluse, didn't reach out to neighbors, didn't reach out to friends, was estranged from his family. And so Joe was just quietly living his own life independently. And he was having back pain. It was bothering him. He had had some injuries in the past, thought, oh, I need to get this checked. From that moment to 4 weeks, in a matter of 4 weeks, Joe went into the emergency room and said, I'm just having this, back pain. I think I tweaked it. And what they found was that Joe had cancer and it was in his spine. And from that moment of living independently without, the C word, the cancer word that everybody, it's almost like an epidemic these days, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But from that moment of your life just ticking along to having some back pain to you have cancer, we need to send you for radiation. Here's an emergency MRI and CT scan, these different tests and x-rays to see how extensive it was, to biopsies. From that to in 4 weeks, Joe is bedridden. The cancer in his spine is pressing in such a way that he is not able to walk. Joe cannot get up to the bathroom on his own. Joe cannot go back to his apartment. He cannot drive. He has no village. He has no family. He does not have a circle of friends. From living independently to bedridden, waiting to be placed in a nursing home. 4 weeks. 4 weeks. What does this teach us? Oh my goodness. It truly is, it's mind-boggling to me when I'm on stage and I'm sharing this message or talking about this here, rereading the stories in my book, and I know these things happen each and every day. And yet it's still shocking when I come across someone who doesn't have anything in place and who doesn't have anyone to help with this transition. What do you do? And that is when Joe called my mom and just said, hi, friend. So I'm in the hospital. I think I'm dying at the time. It was a few weeks ago, and Joe thought he only had a few days left. And yeah, I'm just here. I just wonder if you wouldn't mind going to my apartment and getting my computer. So I might send a couple messages here and there. He didn't even have a computer. He didn't have a cell phone. No one even knew he was in the hospital. This is a real story, people. So my mother, who has the greatest heart, of course, was helping Joe in any way that she could. Well, suddenly it was evident that Joe wasn't going to be able to go back to his apartment. He had a vehicle. What's going to happen with that? Suddenly he was going to have to pay to be in the hospital long term as he waited for nursing home placement, which there is a waiting list. He could end up living out of town somewhere when a bed became available. Who was going to bring his stuff to him? Joe had no one. And when he reached out to my mother, and of course, she is a person who would do anything for anyone, and she was helping in any way she could. Here's the catch. First of all, my mother is only one person. And second of all, my mother is in her 80s, or I hope she doesn't hear me say that. As I'm sharing this story, my mother is going to be 80 November 10th, 2022. And so there's a lot to be done. There's a tremendous amount of responsibility. And I knew that she was feeling the burden of being the only person who just showed up for Joe. Wow. I'm still just reeling in the fact that I'm actually, I'm also laughing because you have to bring the humor into this, right? So Joe told me he had my book, Love Your Life to Death, at his bedside. He had read it several times and told me, this talking about planning and preparing and planning your life and your end of life and all of these things is so important. I just kept reading your book and I told everyone else to read it and it's so great. I just didn't do any of it. And we just had a big laugh because I said, I guess I'm going to have to be more specific when I say to people, read my book, it'll change your life. I promise you. The stories that I was able to share, what an honor. People who have been in the deep trenches of grief, who found joy in their lives again, and what can happen when you don't plan for end of life, the excessive suffering it ripples out and creates for so many people. And so I've always said, please read this. I guess I will have to add now, thank you, Joe, for, for helping me change my message. Please read and take action. Take action, lean into it, one step at a time. One step at a time. So in all of this, my wonderful husband and Jordy and I said, as much as we are teaching and preaching and walking our talk about being proactive as proactive living consultants, there's a tremendous need and a gap for all the people who know, right? They know that they should do things differently, or they're in denial. So they've blocked it out. I'm too young. Oh, I've got lots of time. And oh, the kids will take care of it, or whatever it may be. We realize so many people are going to fall through the cracks, or even if they have family or friends, it will be so overwhelming because they haven't talked about, planned, prepared, crossed their T's, dotted their I's. And so we are now saying, okay, well, we are also now going to help in these crisis situations. This was a crisis. This is a crisis situation for Joe. Elephant in the room, tough love. It could have all been avoided if Joe had created his circle. I often hear people say, oh, they're all alone in the world. They don't have family. They don't have friends. They don't have children. Well, first of all, our village, our compassionate community, that village that will just show up for us no matter what, they don't have to be family. They don't have to be you don't need 1,000 people. You need a village of people who will just show up for you. You need to know what resources are out there that could possibly help in a situation such as this situation. Look at your finances. Are you able to hire people? Do you have neighbors that you know, like, and trust, and build a relationship with them? Create your compassionate neighborhood. People who will be all around you, who will be there, who will just show up because they care for you. Have volunteers. There in our community, we have Muskoka seniors who volunteer, who help, who visit people. What if we have all these things in place before we need them? Do you know how different this situation would be? Oh, Joe. So I don't want to sound like a hero. Well, maybe a little bit. I was seeing my mom feel this tremendous obligation, and it was overwhelming and trying to do all this. And I just said, okay, love your life to death. We are the Love Your Life to Death team. We are going to just show up and be a part of Joe's journey. And I went to visit Joe. the elephant in the room, had the talk, saying, Joe, here's the situation. You don't have anyone, you haven't, right? You haven't created these connections with your neighbors or anyone. And I want you to know that you're not alone. We will just show up for you if you would like. And I would love for my mom to be able to be your friend, to come and visit you, to have tea, to reminisce about fun stories, to hear about your life, share your life stories, Joe. And we will do the heavy lifting, right? We don't need everyone to carry the 10-pound bags of potatoes. In a journey, grief transitions, end of life, it's wonderful to have some people who will have tea and others who will help clean out an apartment and others who will take care of the bigger things that need to be taken care of. So I said, Jordy and I, my hubby, the two of us are going to do the heavy lifting. We will give notice for your apartment and clean it out and sell whatever can be sold and give you the money. We will take your car to our home, so it's not sitting there like an abandoned car. We will detail it and we will sell it for you. Wherever you end up moving, Joe, we will bring the stuff from your home that you would like to have. Take some nice pictures, take the things that are meaningful to you and create a home environment. Joe, you're right. You kind of missed the boat. You read the book, you didn't take action, and here you are. And now what? Right now what? What can we do to make the rest of your life as wonderful as possible? And so that was a tremendous, tremendous relief for our friend. And again, as I step back and I think, what if Joe hadn't reached out to my mom and then she reached out to us? Who would Joe have connected with? He did have a brother who he hadn't seen in 10 years. He's in Italy. He's gone away. He doesn't have anyone else. Would Joe have just died alone in sadness and regret and all of his things? What would have happened to them? Would they have just, I don't know, would the landlord have driven off with his car? I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. So here's the thing. I know that this situation is not unique. I know that in your neighborhood, people that the quiet people that, you don't hear a lot from, they may not have anyone. Have you yourself done this planning? If I've ever had an example of what we need to do and what can happen if we don't, it is this story here and now. Here and now. And so I would love to hear from you. Share some stories of how you're going to make sure that this isn't your story or your parents or your grandparents, maybe your neighbors around, just, checking in. Maybe be a part of their compassionate neighborhood, their compassionate community. Check in to see how they're doing. Do they have people? We need to get better at taking care of ourselves and each other, just showing up for ourselves and each other. To have these conversations, to be able to reach out before a crisis, to reach out during a crisis, and always. The 3 things to remember. Life is unpredictable. Prepare for anything. And when I say prepare for anything, it doesn't mean that there won't be things that you are gobsmacked. That's such a goofy word. When it happens, it doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, like I prepared for everything. This wasn't on my list and yet it happened. Of course, preparing for anything means you know the unexpected can happen. You know that life has glitches. Don't just sit and cross your fingers. Oh, I hope nothing goes wrong. They're so unrealistic. Accept and live by that life is unpredictable. Prepare for anything. Know that the unexpected can happen and glitches, and you're on this path, this trajectory, and it can change at any moment. That's life, because change is the only constant. Change is the only constant. I had everything I was doing in the next little while. We have lots of moving pieces. I had no idea that I would be cleaning out, helping Joe clean out his apartment, sell his car, make sure that his end of life plan is what will honor him, maybe nudge him to create some videos for his family. We'll see. I'll keep you posted along the way. I'm gonna share a little bit of this story in the next few episodes, because as it unfolds, there's much for all of us to learn. And yet in this, there's so much to be grateful for, right? Joe is in the hospital and he's being taken care of. He reached out to my mom and they've rekindled their friendship, and now we are helping with the other stuff. The landlord that I called to say, Joe won't be going back. He's going to be placed in a nursing home. He has cancer. They were so kind and so wonderful and understanding, and I could feel their heartfelt angst. They were upset by it, and I was wondering about, does he have to give 2 months notice? And they're like, oh no, don't worry, the 1 month is enough. And I said, thank you so much. And I said, thank you for caring so much. This is wonderful. So life is unpredictable. Prepare for anything. Change is the only constant. And please create your compassionate community, your neighborhood, your village. Who can you reach out to? And perhaps as you're walking around your neighborhood, who might need another friend, someone in their village? Whew, it's a big story and it's unfolding. So I will keep you posted. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear any thoughts you have, any comments. You can connect with us here, Win-Win-Women, or loveyourlifetodeath.com. And I invite you to get that book, Love Your Life to Death, and take action. I'm going to start and take action. Lean into it. And my program, Get Ready for Grief. There's so many resources. We can do this differently. We can do this differently. And for those who have not created this, for those who are falling through the cracks, there's a lot of damage control. And I invite you to be a part of their journey, because I will tell you what, making a difference at the end of someone's life, especially when someone is alone and they don't know what to do, it's a tremendous gift to your own heart and soul. And of course, my call to action, as always, if you want to be empowered and resilient, if you want to be able to just show up and be a part of that compassionate community, my call to action, plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party. Thank you so much. Join me in the next episode for another topic, and I will also keep you posted on Joe's story. Have a most beautiful, incredible day that you are creating. Thanks again. Bye for now.